Hello everyone, welcome to all of you on this official platform of Legacy IAS Academy. So today in this session, we are going to discuss one of the most important issue of modern history. And the topic is how Warren Hastings laid the administration of Bengal. Okay. So the topic is how Warren Hastings laid the administration of Bengal. So the conquest of Bengal, so let me tell you the story of Bengal. So the conquest of Bengal was started in the middle of 18th century. For example, 1757, that is Battle of Plassey. And this Battle of Plassey resulted into the rule of East India Company, establishment of rule of East India Company. And then another battle in 1764, that is Battle of Buxar. Battle of Buxar. And again, after this Battle of Buxar, Robert Clive was called, and again he was given the charge of Bengal as a governor. And this resulted into dual government in Bengal. Dual government means two rights were there, that is Diwani rights and Nizamat rights. Diwani rights was given to East India Company. That means the right to collect the revenue was given to whom? East India Company. That means from 1765, revenue rights were given to the East India Company. So Diwani rights are revenue. Nizamat rights, that means law and order. Okay. So law and order will be managed by Nawab of Bengal only. Getting my point? Okay. Now, so who is the mastermind of the British Raj to establish their rule in Bengal? So Robert Clive is considered as the mastermind behind the formation of British Raj in East India Company. British Raj in Bengal. He was the mastermind. He laid the foundation of British Raj in Bengal. So Robert Clive, okay, British Raj, where? In Bengal. Clear? So who laid the foundation of British Raj in Bengal? So formation or laid down by Robert Clive, and who gave the strength to British Raj in Bengal? So strength was given by Warren Hastings. Warren Hastings. So the foundation was laid by Robert Clive, and that foundation, the strength to that foundation was given by Warren Hastings. Clear? So the time period of Warren Hastings is 1772 till 1785. This is the time period of Warren Hastings. Now, three important things. So now we'll be discussing the policies of Warren Hastings. Now, the policies of Warren Hastings. Now, there are three important policies of Warren Hastings. Three important policies of Warren Hastings. And those three important policies are translation, of Indian scriptures. Another important policy, revenue reforms. And third most important policy, judicial reforms. Getting my point? Three important policies by Warren Hastings. Translation of Indian scriptures. Second, revenue reforms. Third, judicial reforms. Now, I will be discussing these three reforms in detail. Okay, so the first is translation of Indian scriptures. Translation of Indian scriptures. Suppose you have conquered any foreign area. Okay, now to understand the population of that conquered area, you need to understand the culture of that area, you need to understand the history of that area, you need to understand the society of that area. So to understand these things, you have to study the literature of that conquered area. Getting my point? That is why when Delhi Sultanate rulers came, they started translating Hindu scriptures. When Mughals came, they started translating Turkish and Hindu scriptures. Same thing was done by British also, because it is very important to understand that particular area that you have conquered. Clear? For example, Firoz Shah Tughlaq in medieval times. Firoz Shah Tughlaq. He translated Hindu scriptures. Why? Because these Islamic rulers, came from outside and became ruler of India. So how they are going to rule India? They need to understand Indian society. So to rule, they need to understand Indian society. Indian society. They need to understand Indian religion. They need to understand our culture. Getting my point? That is why they started translating Hindu scriptures. Then same thing, after the establishment of Akbar, Mughals, Akbar, Akbar created translation department, translation department. Translation of what? Translation of literature. Translation of literature. Which literature? Turkish, because before Mughals, Turks, Delhi Sultanate rule was there. So their literature should also be translated. So Turkish and Persian literature, translation of Turkish and Persian literature. Okay. And translation of Sanskrit literature. Translation of Sanskrit literature. Getting my point? Okay. Similarly, British also foreigners, and they became ruler in India. Okay. So similarly, British also foreigners and became ruler of India. So to understand the structure of conquered society, to understand the structure of conquered society, okay, so what they did, they also started translating the Indian scriptures. Okay, that is why Warren Hastings, okay, in 1784. So Warren Hastings in 1784 created what? Created Asiatic Society of Bengal. Created Asiatic Society of Bengal and created Calcutta Madrasa Why Calcutta Madrasa was created? To learn Persian language. Getting my point? That is why translation started. And then in 1791, Sir Jonathan Duncan, he created Banaras College, Banaras Sanskrit College. Why this college was created? To learn Sanskrit language. To learn Sanskrit. Now why these structures, why these things were created? Because British were the foreigners and became rulers of India. So to understand Indian philosophy, to understand Indian society, to understand Indian culture, they need to understand Indian scriptures. So various Indian scriptures were translated. Various. So various Indian scriptures were translated. For example, for example, for example, Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita was translated. Another important example, translation of Manu Smriti. Translation of Manu Smriti. And the name of its translation is called as Code of Hindu Laws. Code of Hindu Laws. Okay. Another important translation, Fatwa Alamgiri. Fatwa Alamgiri. Now, what is this Fatwa Alamgiri? It is the rules issued by Aurangzeb. Rules and order issued by Aurangzeb. Getting my point? Okay. So this is the translation. So this is the first policy. They started translation of Indian scriptures. I hope this much is clear. Okay. No need to mug up all these things. Just try to understand the concepts. Getting my point? Now, another important policy, second policy, was revenue reforms. It was revenue reforms. Revenue reforms. Okay. So, Robert Clive created double government, as I have told you just now. Nizamat rights and Diwani rights. Okay. Diwani rights means revenue collection rights. Now, East India Company in 1770, East India Company was in loss. Why? Because at the same time, there was a global event which was started, that is American struggle for independence. America was also the colony of British. Okay, so Americans were started protesting against East India Company, that means British Parliament. So similarly, East India Company was facing loss. So that is why Warren Hastings came. Warren Hastings. Okay. Warren Hastings came in 1772. Warren Hastings came in 1772 and he started revenue reforms. Revenue reforms. Now, what were those reforms? Okay. So, the moment he came, he created, Warren Hastings, he created Board of Revenue. He created Board of Revenue in 1772. He created Board of Revenue in 1772. And in this board, what he did one experiment. And what was those experiment? What was the experiment? The experiment was, he started bidding. Okay. That means he called some Indians. Okay. And the responsibility of collecting the revenue was given to them, was given to that Indian Okay, those those who are going to collect highest revenue. Okay, that means auctioning was started. Okay, the auctioning of started. Okay, suppose this is Warren Hastings and he calls some big zamindars or big personalities, Indian personalities. Okay, now suppose this person said that I will collect you a highest amount of revenue. So the right of revenue collection will be given to him. Getting my point? So the auction was started. Okay, auction was started. Now suppose you all are preparing for UPSC and your parent said that we will give you 10,000 rupees as your pocket money. So you know that your parents are going to send you 10,000 rupees every month. So you have estimated your expenses accordingly. Okay, and at the end of the month your father said that we will pay you only 7,000. That means you will incur loss because you have spent your expenditure, you have spent money as per 10,000 rupees calculation. Okay, so in a similar manner, those bidders, okay, they promise to pay highest amount of revenue, that we will collect you a highest amount of revenue. So when the time of collection came, okay, East India Company incurs 20 crore rupees as a loss. Okay, 20 crore rupees. So East India Company was on the verge of financial bankruptcy. Financial bankruptcy. Okay. Then East India Company asked 10 lakh pounds 10 lakh pounds from Bank of England. Okay, so if someone helps you or if someone gives you money, okay, then that person will impose some conditions on you. So the moment East India Company took loan 10 lakh pounds from Bank of England, at that time British Parliament got the opportunity to put their hands on the achievements of East India Company, and this resulted into that British Parliament said that now we will regulate East India Company. That is why Regulating Act came. In 1773. Regulating Act. Now British Parliament will regulate East India Company. So this Regulating Act, okay, Regulating Act 1773. So from 1772, okay, till 1773, Warren Hastings was the governor of Bengal. Now Warren Hastings will be designated as Governor General of Bengal. So Warren Hastings became Governor General of Bengal. Governor General of Bengal. This was the political achievement of Bengal. Okay, so as Bengal was shifted into a political power, because here the governor of Bengal was designated as Governor General of Bengal. Getting my point? Okay, And the second most important thing, 1774 Supreme Court at Calcutta was established. Okay, one Chief Justice of Supreme Court and three other subordinate judges. Okay, so who was the first Chief Justice of Supreme Court? Eliza Amphy. Clear? Then apart from this, Governor General will be having his executive council. Okay, so Governor General will be having is Governor General Executive Council. That means all the decisions will be taken by Governor General Executive Council. So the structure of Governor General Executive Council. So this is the structure. Structure in the sense, how many members were there? One. This one represents Governor General plus 4 other members were there. 4 members in his council. So overall total 5. So in Governor General Council 5 members were there. 1 Governor General himself and 4 other members. So this is called as Governor General Executive Council. Governor General Executive Council. This much is clear to all of you? Okay. Now, so I hope this much is clear. Okay. Now, after this, again East India Company was facing crisis. Why? You must be thinking why? Because Bank of England has already given them 10 lakh pounds at that time. Now, in 1780, East India Company opened 2 front wars. So to wage a war, to fight a war, you need money. Getting my point? So East India Company opened 2 fronts. 2 fronts with whom? One with Mysore. Okay. In 1780, Second Anglo-Mysore was started, and another front with whom? Marathas. Getting my point? So because of these 2 fronts, again East India Company was in crisis. Again East India Company was in bankruptcy, on the verge of bankruptcy. So again East India Company took a loan of 10 lakh pounds. 10 lakh pounds. From whom? From Bank of England. So what is the outcome? Previously when they took loan, then Regulating Act came, and this time when they took loan from 10 lakh pounds from Bank of England, then Pitt's India Act was introduced. Pitt's India Act in 1784 was introduced. And what was the important feature of Pitt's India Act in terms of revenue? So in Pitt's India Act of 1784, Board of Control was created by British Parliament. So in this act, Board of Control was created on whom? On the Court of Directors. Court of Directors of East India Company. Getting my point? So, Board of Control was created on the Court of Directors. So, what they will do? They will take care of administration. Okay. And their responsibility, now the responsibility of Court of Director is to take care of trade and commerce. This is the most important thing. Getting my point? These are revenue reforms by Warren Hastings. Now, third important policy, judicial reforms. Now, judicial reforms. Now, judicial reforms. Now, Warren Hastings created a judicial plan. Okay. So, before that, let me tell you that from 1757, remember this thing, from 1757 till 1772, from 1757 till 1772, there was no state in Bengal. At that time, Bengal was not a state, it was just a geographical area. Getting my point? It was not a state. So, there was no state in Bengal 1757 till 1772. That means Bengal was the victim of complete anarchy. That means Bengal was the victim of complete anarchy. Complete anarchy. Getting my point? Now, so Bengal was the victim of complete anarchy. So, in this manner, judicial plan was created. See, no state can be managed without executive and judiciary. This is the formula. No state can be managed without executive and judiciary. Okay. For state, judiciary and executive, these two are most important organs. So, executive was already created. Okay, executive was already created. So, executive was already created. What was the executive wing of East India Company? Governor General Executive Council. Governor General Executive Council. Okay. Governor General Executive Council. Now there is a need for judicial reforms. So Executive Council is there. That means executive wing is there. So there is a need for judicial reforms. Getting my point? So Warren Hastings created judicial plan. Judicial plan. And in this judicial plan, Bengal was divided into 3 districts. In this judicial plan, Bengal was divided into 3 districts. Okay. In this judicial plan. So, Bengal divided into 3 districts. And those 3 districts are one Bengal itself, another Orissa, and third Bihar. Bengal was divided into 3 districts: Bengal, Orissa, and Bihar. Now these 3 districts, were controlled by English collectors. Okay, so from here the nucleus of civil services was laid down. Getting my point? 3 districts will be administered by whom? English collectors. So these 3 districts will be administered by English collectors. English collectors. So these collectors were appointed for collection of revenue. Collection of revenue. Getting my point? That means the nucleus of civil services laid down by whom? Warren Hastings. Warren Hastings. Getting my point? The nucleus of civil services was laid down by Warren Hastings. But the father of civil services is called as Lord Cornwallis. Why? Because Lord Cornwallis separated executive functions and judicial features. That is why Lord Cornwallis is called as father of civil services. But who laid the foundation of, or who laid the nucleus of civil services? Warren Hastings. Getting my point? Now, in terms of judicial reforms, now there are 2 areas. One is rural, another is urban area. So in rural area, old structure was to be followed. Old structure was to be followed. Getting my point? That means no change in rural areas, but change in urban areas. In urban areas, he created 2 courts, 2 adalats: Diwani Adalat and Fauzdari Adalats. Diwani Adalats for civil cases. Getting my point? And Fauzdari Adalats for criminal cases. It is for criminal cases. This much is clear to all of you. So these are 3 reforms done by Warren Hastings: translation of Indian scriptures, revenue reforms, and third, judicial reform. That is why Indian history cannot neglect the reforms done by Warren Hastings. He laid the nucleus of civil services in India. Getting my point? Okay. So I hope this much is clear to all of you. Okay. I hope the policies of Warren Hastings are clear to all of you. Okay. So for more such videos, you can like our channel, subscribe our channel, that is Legacy IAS Academy. Thank you so much.